the next morning, our brand new software engineer comes in the door, and in there is a cage in the middle of the office with a huge possum in this cage. And the rest of us are at a conference, so she is all by herself, and she just slacks and she's like, I have a critter update.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Workplace Weirdness, the non-HR HR podcast where we dive into the strangest office situations and the most awkward workplace dramas. I'm your host, Maya Kadar Kovalsky, and I'm a former chief culture officer and head of people. And I've seen and heard it all and from all sides. So truly no judgments. This is a safe space to get real and explore the cringy, confusing, or chaotic side of office life. So grab your coffee, kick back in your swivel chair, and listen up. We've got a lot to get to today. We have questions about a teacher penalized for her honesty, a compassion-free boss, and the awkwardness of bro love in the office. But first, our friend of Workplace Weirdness today is Karen Borchert. Karen was a COO for Flywheel and more recently became the founder and CEO of Alpaca, an edtech company that supports educators through recognition gifts and pulse surveys. Alpaca is redefining how we understand the real-life teacher experience in their workplace, and it's truly eye-opening. Welcome, Karen. We're delighted to have you visit us here at Workplace Weirdness.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be here, Maya.
What struck me about your mission is that you're doing employee engagement and recognition for schools, which somehow some people don't always recognize as, or respect as a workplace. So, how did you start thinking about teachers and their engagement in work in this way?
Yeah, and you really hit it on the head. I think we don't think about schools as workplaces, and yet schools employ so many people in so many different roles. And my background is in employee engagement, kind of like yours, around in technology companies and things like that. And so I spent a lot of time in sort of the employee engagement world, and then I became a mom of school age kids. And as I was kind of going back and forth, to school and work, I always wondered why is it that teachers don't have some of the same kind of overall concepts at work that we do in all kinds of other sectors and all kinds of other places. So I really just wanted to start learning about what it was like to work at school, what a workplace looks like at school. And so I just started by asking to come listen to teachers and talk about what their work experience is like. So I started taking coffee to one teacher, and then they introduced me to another and another, and we just started interviewing teachers and hearing about kind of what work is like and what they needed.
Why don't you tell us more about it?
Yeah, so we started off, we kind of said like let's not try to solve this whole problem, because every time people start to talk about the role of an educator, it's like, oh my gosh, but teacher pay, and then also this and also that. It feels so big. So we were like, no, let's start really small and let's solve one little tiny part of this problem. And one of the problems that we saw is that a lot of schools, a lot of places, teachers will pay for their own supplies, and they will pay for the things that they need to do their best work in their classroom, whether that's their dry erase markers or whatever. It just can sometimes be a lot of barriers to get some of that stuff. And we said, you know what, we can solve that one. That's easy. So we created basically a subscription box offering. So we created something that looks a lot like Stitch Fix for teachers, and schools and PTOs and folks would sign up for it for their school, and we would send these little care packages that include some supplies, some snacks and treats, just some things to make teachers feel a little bit better and more supported at work. And that's where we started off.
Would any other job tell you to buy your own supplies? I mean, it's just crazy to think. Like, if like I said to my employee now, like, oh, can you just like get your own cell phone so that you can like or something like that? Like
Right,
just
right.
crazy to think about it. But in teaching, we somehow live with that fact.
There's a lot of just differences. Like, you said, people don't think about schools as workplaces. And so there are just some things that haven't, in some ways, I just think some things that haven't quite caught up. And like, it's complicated and challenging because it's kind of a quasi, government organization, in a lot of in a lot of public schools. So, it's I honestly don't think that, school principals or, managers are, they're not like, oh, you go you go get your own stuff. It's just that they're, teachers are really, really creative and resourceful professionals. And so if they want to do they and so often they want to do these awesome things for their classrooms, and to make it happen, they'll just kind of do that, and they'll say, we're going to make this lesson even more amazing if we have, marshmallows and toothpicks. So they do.
It's motivated by them wanting to do their job better, essentially.
Yeah, yeah, and that should be kind of rewarded, right? Like congratulated.
How did you evolve into taking it a step further?
So in our packs, we always included a little survey just to kind of check in. Like, did you like the stuff in the pack? Was it good? Like, what do you want more of, less of? And then we always ask this question, kind of, how are you doing? And just checked in on teachers and to ask how they were doing. And it was sort of accidental. We really just wanted a little feedback on things. But what we discovered is that teachers really liked telling us how they were doing. I think they were, kind of felt like they were part of this supportive program. And so they told us how we were doing. And we looked back one day and we had like 16,000 words and sentiments from teachers about how they were doing at work. And we were like, you want to know who probably would be like served well by this is their bosses, right? Like their principals or assistant principals who really want to support them well at work. So we said, what if we could create a survey that is a little bit more, could be used for any school anywhere, with or without the packs, where we could ask teachers how they're feeling and how they're doing in a really brief way, and then turn that data back to principals fully anonymized to say, hey, here's how your teachers are doing today. That's what we built with Alpaca Pulse, and it's been really fun to kind of see the evolution as it goes.
Well, as a chief culture officer, I actually utilize pulse surveys a lot, but I didn't think about, doing it the way you do it. And, so I've seen a demo, and what I love about the way you lay it out is it's very easy actually, and also you're suggested a number of words. So can you just take us through how that's built and what that's based on?
I've used pulse surveys a lot in employee engagement stuff in the past too. And one of the things that has always kind of bugged me is the idea of asking employees like, hey, how are you doing today on a scale of 1 to 5? Like teachers, any employees, it's a super hard question to answer. And it doesn't feel great, right? Like you never really want to say you're not doing well at work. So it's hard. And teachers really feel that. They're very mission minded. And so they don't want to say that. And then on the other side, when you get the results back, okay, like your teacher's on a scale of 1 to 5 or a 3.7, like, oh, is that like, what do I do with that? Like, how do I do anything? And so we learned a bunch about kind of the concept of semantic survey scales, and then combined it with pulse surveys to create what we call semantic pulse surveys. And it's kind of a fancy word for a really simple concept, which is just to ask how teachers are feeling and ask them to answer with real words and choose real words that we can then code with kind of some sentiment analysis and that kind of thing, and give back to principals to say, hey, this is how your teachers are doing. But when we ask the teachers, it's all really neutral. All of the words that we use are words that real teachers use to describe work, and they're all okay to say, right? Like it's okay to say that you feel really supported and cared for, but you also feel really underwater. That's teaching and most roles are very they're nuanced, right? Like they're complicated, and so we want to sort of honor that complication and give teachers a way to say all the ways that they're feeling, and then be able to give that information back in really useful ways for principals to support them.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's beautiful to, first of all, acknowledge the fact that we're complicated and we're not all happy or all sad or all whatever. And beyond that, I think the push for getting those numbers, that 1 to 5 scale, is because people are looking to datafy to make sure that, that data and metrics are the way that we're making decisions. But the truth is that when you're talking about feelings and sentiments, you're right, the semantics are important. And it's just a really great scale that I'm sure that you can I'm really impressed with you guys taking that and implementing it in this way. And I'm sure that it makes it much easier for teachers to answer after a long day working. You don't necessarily even want to like type a sentence into the keyboard, but instead you're given a choice of words and you can click onto them. And of course, if you want to go further and tell more, you can. But I think that that's actually a really simplified piece of this product that I think is what makes it, very special, very unique, and very easy to implement. In every show, I like to ask people who've, been through the journey of making it to being executives and being CEOs about their journey. But more importantly, I really want to know, what has been your weirdest workplace moment, Karen?
So we actually had a very weird workplace moment here at Alpaca just not very many months ago. So we work in an office downtown here in Omaha, Nebraska, and we for a couple of weeks we started noticing we would come in the mornings and it was like things were all messed up in our office, like snacks were all over the floor, like plants were knocked down. We're like, what is going on? Is somebody coming into our office? Like, or do we have an intruder in here? Like it was, we didn't know what was going on. And so we were all like, everybody in like, we were, Slack was like going crazy. It was like, okay, we have to make sure that we are locking up when we leave at the end of the day. Please make sure that we double check the locks. We were like, and everybody's like, I know I locked it. I know I did. But every day it was like getting worse and worse. And so we were like contacted our building security. We're like, can you please come and check our windows? We feel like somebody's getting into our space at night. Can you check the videos? And they were like, there is nobody coming into your space. We've checked the videos. Nothing's happening. So they came in to like check it out, look around our office, see if if they could see anything. And they were like, did you see the pile of droppings in the corner of your office? So we were like, oh no. So they were like, there's got to be something in here, like a cat or something that has somehow gotten into this space. There's been a bunch of construction in the building. So we were like, oh man, like maybe something came through the vent. And so they were like, what we're going to do is we're going to set a trap, and it'll be a live animal trap, and we'll set it and we'll find out what this is. And we were like, we cannot handle that. Like we cannot. And they were like, we will take care of all of it. They're like, we're going to put the live trap in. We'll be there at 7 tomorrow morning to check it. And if there's anything in there, we'll take care of it. And you never will have to see it. And we're like, okay, great. And then the next morning, our brand new software engineer comes in the door, and in there is a cage in the middle of the office with a huge possum in this cage. And and the rest of us are at a conference. So she is all by herself, and she just slacks and she's like, I have a critter update. So it was super funny, but we like, now it's like part of our 2025 goals is like 100% fewer animals in the office. It's a big goal for us this year. So
I was just gonna say, I just feel bad for her that's her first like moment at the office. On the other hand, she just had to sort of just jump in and understand that. Yep, that's
yeah, she's with us now. Like,
that's what's happening today.
yeah.
Next, we're going to move into the week in work, where we discuss a news story that could affect how we work or think about work life. So, recently I've seen a bunch of articles about women entrepreneurs working from the Midwest. More specifically, Business Insider did a profile on one entrepreneur whose name is Audra Donnell, who found that after having moved from other more expensive regions in the United States to the Midwest, that the Midwest actually supports her business goals in very surprising ways. So, some of the reasons for this include the cost of living in the Midwest is 10% below the national average. She is closer to family. She can now afford to buy a home. And also, Danelle finds fewer gatekeepers, meaning she can build meaningful business connections more easily. So that led her specifically to build a women's leadership circle. And she found that there's a real need for that in the market. But I really bring this article to your attention because I know that you too are an entrepreneur in the Midwest. And I just want to know, how is it being in Omaha, Nebraska? How's that been for your business? How's that been for you?
Yeah. Well, I have a lot. I mean, I can definitely echo a lot of her sentiments about that and that news article for sure. I grew up in Nebraska and then spent time in St. Louis and Washington D.C. and Austin, living and working and building organizations and companies and all those places, and then came home to Nebraska about 12 years ago and joined a small startup at the time that we were helping grow. And I was amazed when we got here at how many things are easier here in a lot of ways. Now, there are also things that are a lot harder. So raising money is a lot harder in the Midwest, and the Midwest is often referred to as flyover country. And there's a lot of meaning that people just go from coast to coast and fly over. So there's very often there's a lot less venture capital deployed, and there are a lot less companies that kind of reach those exit stages and things like that in the Midwest. That's just true. That's changing, and that's really exciting to see. But it is harder to do that here. But as far as building your company and also really building and identifying talent, there's a lot of advantages here. So the Midwest has a lot of really extraordinary colleges and universities, and a lot of really amazing programs. The University of Nebraska has an extraordinary engineering program that produces some amazing talent, and those are talented young men and women who are coming into their first job. They're living in the Midwest, so their cost of living is low. They might be able to kind of buy their first home or really kind of establish their life here. But then so for those of us who are looking for software engineers or for data scientists, we get the opportunity to work with some really amazing talent and help them grow with our companies here. So I actually wrote an article about this a while back, right when I was leaving Flywheel, called "Building Something Big in the Middle of Somewhere Small," and it was really about that idea. It was really about the concept that the Midwest actually gives us some sort of gifts to work with, where you're not drowning in venture capital everywhere, and so you have to think really smart about how you are growing and funding your company. There's kind of a Midwest ethos about that it's not like you're not just in Silicon Valley
You
looking
have to be
for
scrappier,
yeah,
basically.
you have to be really scrappy. You have to do some, you have to figure that out. And, we at Flywheel, people used to always ask us, they were like, oh, how are you building this, 200-person technology company? Where are you finding all of these software engineers in the Midwest? And we were like, oh, we grow them. And they were like, what? We were like, yeah, I mean, we have people that came into we had people that came into that company in roles like they were literally coming from working at Starbucks to working in technical support for us, and then they grew and they started realizing in technical support that they actually really liked the technology side of things, and then grew and became software engineers. And there are people in the Midwest, right? Like some of those guys and gals are running their own companies, or are top software engineers or engineering managers for other startups in town now. And that's because they literally came in from being a barista at Starbucks, and now they're software engineers. And that's what I mean when I say, growing them is, there's an opportunity for that here.
Somehow I see it like being as a tagline or something, we don't only just grow corn, we also grow engineers or something like. Okay, well, I appreciate the time spent now on talking a little bit about the Midwest and understanding that trend and also what you're doing in your company. But it's time now to go on a quick break. So when we come back, we have questions for you about a teacher who wonders if honesty really is the best policy, and an edtech car crash. Stay tuned. Make digital accessibility effortless with Sensit. At Sensit, we're breaking barriers to ensure the digital world is accessible for everyone. With over a decade of expertise, we empower software companies to design, build, and sustain accessibility throughout their development lifecycle. Our specialty? Crafting precise, no fuss VPATs, or voluntary product accessibility templates, to keep your software compliant. We integrate seamlessly with your product team to streamline workflows, reduce friction, and deliver results at lightning speed. Fast turnarounds, expert support, accessibility made easy. Ready to level up? Request a demo today at sensit360.com. Welcome back to Workplace Weirdness. I'm here with Karen Borchert to answer the first of our listener questions today. Are you ready, Karen?
I'm ready.
Okay, let's start our listener questions with a teacher who made the mistake of being honest. Hello, Workplace Weirdness. I can't tell if I made a rookie error or just got burned despite doing the right thing. I teach at a school in an expensive area and was thinking of looking for a new job because it's hard to live here on my teacher's salary. I told the principal about my money issues, saying I was thinking of moving to a more high paid job, and she told me not to bother coming back after June. Should I have not said anything and simply quit the minute I got a different job? What happened to honesty as the best policy?
Honesty is the best policy. Full stop. The end. That's true. And in both kind of like on both sides of the equation, having a conversation about work and how you're doing with work, and if you're considering leaving and why you might be considering leaving, is a good idea. I think it's right. It feels right and honest as an employee to do that, but it also, from the manager's perspective, can be so helpful to be able to plan ahead and to be able to have a real open conversation before it's too late. This is why companies are doing stay interviews right now, like where when people are staying in their jobs and they have decided to sign on for another year at a school. There's a trend in education right now to do stay interviews where once they've signed their contract for the year ahead, principals are meeting with their teachers to say, what's making you stay? And what are you doing? So the idea of more conversations about work and why we feel like we're staying or why we might not is so much better than the exit interview when you learn all of these things that you could have maybe done later, right? Which is not what we want. So I think it was the right thing to do to have that conversation, and such a bummer to get kind of burned in that way is just awful. So I think it's always the right thing to do, but I also would say, no, you don't owe anybody, anything as far as like sharing your personal life with your boss if you don't want to or if you don't feel comfortable. So knowing, I think it's the right thing to talk about it, but it's also knowing what you want out of that conversation.
I mean, I just really felt terrible for this person. I was pretty incensed because I was like, they really did do the right thing, if you ask me. I very much appreciate when my employees come to me and, give me a heads up about stuff that's going on, about their future plans, so that I can plan better, so that I know how to navigate and I don't know, and I just feel bad that this came and sort of hit her, in the behind, I guess, when she was just trying to, have that sort of honest conversation. I also am kind of surprised. I'm like, does this principal have like a line of people waiting out the door for a low salary job in a high budget area? I don't know. I just felt like that's not obvious. And so, when somebody comes and they sort of voice their situation, they're not asking necessarily for, a salary increase or anything like that. They're just saying, like, this is the situation. I'm trying to figure it out. That is an opportunity, I think, that they could have turned it around. They could have maybe been encouraged to supplement their income in some way, to maybe take on more coaching classes, more an after school program, something that could, have maybe increased their salary in some way, perhaps. So I just feel like there's an opportunity there. So I would even say to the managers out there, when somebody comes to you, first of all, you don't have to respond right away. That's the first thing.
Right.
Second thing is, think about how to really listen to this person and say, wait, what are they actually asking of me? Like, are they quitting? This person wasn't sitting there and saying I'm quitting. They're saying I'm in a situation and I'm trying to figure it out and I might need to, rethink it, but I'm not necessarily. So I just feel like let's listen to those nuances a little bit better. And because otherwise you instill the culture of of where people do go out and find another job and then don't even give you that opportunity as a manager to save them. They basically say, well, here's the story, I'm going, bye. And then that doesn't leave you a lot of leeway. So it's definitely the preferred position to be in as a manager, is to get the information early and to be able to work with it.
I agree. I think what you said about, kind of what that sets up, like if every other teacher in the school knows that that principal said, oh, don't bother coming back in June, nobody else is going to tell their boss anything else about what's going on in their lives for fear of that. That creates a like kind of a fear environment, which is absolutely deadly. And the other thing is that, if somebody's willing to share, that employee is willing to share, I'm financially feeling stressed about working here, that is a very vulnerable thing for an employee to share with their boss, and it might not even be the whole story. So then at that point, a manager's opportunity is to find out, like, let's get to the heart of the matter. Is it really a financial thing, or is there, or like, how might we understand like what's really going on here? Because it may be that they could turn that around. It may be that that principal showing that much care and support and wanting to get to the heart of the matter might be just a thing that that teacher is like, all right, actually, I think I can make this work, and I want to work for this person. Like, people, like, it's, I know it's cliche, but like, people quit their managers, not their jobs. And that's true. And so I think a manager with an opportunity to really jump in and show compassion and show care there creates this opportunity for to save that person. And like you said, it's not like if they've got a teacher vacancy, like 40% of teacher vacancies go unfilled. So there's not a line of people waiting for any, any of those things. So I think it's important to treat that
Thanks
talent
for that
as a
input,
good thing.
Karen. I think you completely, understand all the kind
Mhm.
of nuances of what this person might be going through. Well, our next listener question is also a little bit about, how the boss reacts to something. So, our next listener is wondering, where's the compassion? Hi, Maya. I'm an ed tech rep in a big state and I'm really overworked. I was hired when my boss was out on maternity leave and she's never seemed to like me. Recently, I was burnt out from too much driving, so I flew to an important meeting and rented a car to be sure I was fresh upon arrival. Unfortunately, I got in a car accident. I wasn't hurt, but I was really shaken up. When I called my office, still standing by the semi wrecked rental car, she told me to get to that meeting ASAP. I was really taken aback by the lack of compassion and I just began crying. What should I have said or done? Is there anything I could do now? So take it away, Karen. What are your thoughts on that one?
Well, first of all, the stress of standing by a wrecked rental car late for an important meeting is like gives me so much sadness and anxiety. Like, I have so much empathy for that, or like sympathy for that. I guess it's never happened to me, but that one hurts. But I think what I'm reacting to a little bit actually is the words that person used early in the question, which is, I heard the words like overworked and burned out and unliked. There's some challenging things going on, and that's something that needs help. Like, I hope that I like finding balance there feels really, really important, and having real honest conversations about how we're feeling at work feels really important. In terms of what actually happened, in terms of that situation, once you get to that situation, first of all, like, not awesome on the manager for not starting with like, are you okay? And let's be safe here. The reader asks, is there anything I can do now? And I do think that this, sometimes like a really clearly bad situation like this can be a really clear opportunity for, sort of a beginning of a healing process, or a heal to the relationship. So I think that you could go to the manager in this situation, take it really objectively and clearly, and say, hey, listen, like, I've got to sit down and talk to you about this, because this was kind of really, really far for me. Something happened. And I love Kim Scott's book Radical Candor, and in it, that she uses the situation behavior impact framework. So the situation, the first two are really, really, really objective and fact based. So this is a situation. I flew, I got a rental car, I was driving to this meeting, I got in an accident. Nobody's arguing with that, right? Like, and then behavior is, I called you, you were my first call, I trusted you and I called you and you said this. Again, that's just objective, that's just facts, right? And then the impact is really like the impact it had on that employee. So like, that like was really killer for me. I was already scared and stressed, and what you said made me feel like nobody cared, and that you didn't care about me or about my safety, and I was really hurt by your lack of compassion. And then they can address that specific impact together using the facts that they have. And that, I think, is a really, really helpful place to start if it's time to kind of heal a working relationship that way. So I bet it's hard to go have that conversation as the employee in this situation, situation and you shouldn't have to. But if you want this relationship to be better and you want to create, a better balance in your work, I would recommend using it because it is a clear enough situation. Like nobody's going to argue with you that that wasn't the right reaction, but it gives you then a chance to really say, "Hey, let's talk about this."
Right. And the whole idea of this framework is that it kind of eliminates the emotion from it, right? So in other words, especially since there was I understand why it triggers emotion. I mean that this person seems to have been trying to go above and beyond in trying to be at this meeting and sort of take the precautions, and then even that didn't work out, and then there was sort of no empathy from the boss. And my first reaction as a manager, if somebody were to call me like this, would have been, first things first, are you okay? Are you safe? Do you need to go to the hospital? There's like a bunch of different checklist items that would have gone through my head before even addressing the meeting. At the end of the day, I think we have to behave as people to one another. It's not obvious maybe to everybody, but it really should be. And I even when I read this, I was like, I mean, on some level, and I mean, maybe this sounds weird, but, like, why didn't they even, like, just fake the empathy if they don't even have the empathy? Like, I mean, I think it's just textbook, right? To just be like, "Are you okay?" And then, like, "Can you still go to the meeting?" Like, if you really, really if you're really that kind of boss that it matters so much to you. But and maybe the boss even or the manager wasn't thinking, like, about other possibilities. So that's why I always say, like, take a breath, like, think for a second. When this kind of stuff happens to you, it's not only about work. There's always ways that we can change a meeting, we can postpone something. Nothing is life or death within this profession that we were talking about. There are some professions where that's not the case, but this is not one of them. And the thing, and I think you said this, I'm just repeating, the thing we want to make sure that employees know is that we care for their safety and their well-being and their physical and mental well-being. So anyway, but if I really wanted to advise the person who called in, I'd probably say, the second your boss reacted like that, I might have called HR also and just asked them, like, what do I do? Because I have a feeling that also HR might have given some more practical suggestions, like, we have a benefit that covers this, or this. Like, please go to the ER right now just to check that you're okay. Even if you feel fine, just do it. So that's where, and again, I'm not trying to pull rank on the boss, but just there are other resources even within a workplace if it's a large enough company where you can feel supported. And beyond that, I love the fact that you're looking at this as an opportunity to maybe start a conversation. But I do think you're absolutely right. It's only if that trust relationship, if there's any chance for that trust relationship to revive itself in some way. I just don't know if it was there to begin with. So that's why I'm just a little bit more cynical about it.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. And I think what you said about, life or like this is not a life or death situation is so important. Like if you just kind of play it out in your head and you think like, okay, what if the manager had called the client of this very important meeting and been like, "Hi, my rep that's coming to visit you today was in a car accident on the way to the meeting." Like there's no way that that client would be like, "Well, they better get here or you're going to lose our business." Like that's not what's going to happen, right? They would be like, if you just sort of think it a little bit beyond, that what's going to happen is that they're going to say, "Oh my gosh, we'll reschedule. I hope they're okay. Is there anything we can do here locally?" Like that's it. That's exactly what would happen. And so from a manager perspective, I think reminding ourselves like to think clearly about what's the natural and correct progression of this and is this really life or death is critical.
Thank you for your input. I think that you're absolutely right, and I do hope that this person is able to either have a conversation or to move on or do what's needed. Hopefully, they don't feel bad because they have nothing to feel bad about. Every week, we cover one question addressing the kind of cringeworthy office faux pas that'll make you Google overseas Peace Corps job. Hello, Maya. I'm a guy managed by an older, pretty senior guy who likes to compliment me in front of other people. He seems to think it relaxes the group before meetings. He gets that nowadays you can't make comments to women on their appearance, so instead I get comments on my biceps and that I must turn heads on the street. He's not hitting me, it's more of a bro vibe. It makes everyone in the meetings uncomfortable, and I wonder how it might affect what people think of me. I've told him privately that I don't like it, but he thinks I'm joking. What should I do?
Well, my like hot take on this is that like it is actually not It's not just like not appropriate for people to talk to women about their physical appearance in the workplace. Like that, like we don't need to bring gender into this. It's actually not okay to talk to anybody about like we don't need to do that to anyone. It can make anybody feel uncomfortable. It doesn't matter if he knows he wasn't hitting on him. It that like we're in a place where we just don't need to do that. There's no reason for that. So that's my first thing to say about that question. My second thing is I think it was right to say something to him, like to say, I don't really like this, to address it directly and kindly, but to do that. And then the third thing I would say is, if it makes you uncomfortable, like then it needs to not happen. Like that's it. Like whatever it is, it doesn't matter that you're a guy. It doesn't matter that he's joking. Like what matters is if you feel uncomfortable at work, you're going to feel uncomfortable at work, and that sucks. So I think that you figuring out a way to address it is right. I guess like one idea I would have around that is that this would be, there's lots and lots of places, like in the last situation, that like there's lots and lots of places where talking to your peers and gossiping or like having a lot of side conversations is not the answer. So like in the last situation, like I wouldn't go tell that person's all their coworkers that their boss was a jerk to them when they were in a car accident, because I don't think that helps anybody. But in this situation, I think that a well-placed peer conversation that where a peer could potentially go back to that boss now that you've already tried and it didn't really work, having a peer say, hey man, I know when you're like making those comments to him, like he's like you're just joking and all of those things and you think it loosens up the crowd, but it's actually kind of awkward for the rest of us, and I know he doesn't like it. He said he didn't like it. And when you get feedback from that's kind of secondhand in that way, whether it's positive or negative, it means a lot more. It means that somebody said something to someone else. So like in the positive way, it's really powerful, right? Like if I say to you like, hey Maya, like I loved that episode of the podcast, you're like, oh, thanks. But if I am like, hey, Maya, I heard from our mutual colleague that episode of the podcast was amazing and she shared it with like 20 people, you are going to take that. That is such a more powerful compliment to you than me just telling you something. Like secondhand compliments are magical, but the same can work on the other side, on negative feedback. And so I think, if the boss has a peer that you're close to, or if there's somebody that is in the meetings that you can trust and that you're close to just be like, hey, this thing is really bugging me and I tried to stop it, but it's like annoying and I don't want to like make a big thing of it. But like, could you say something in your next one-on-one with them? Then like that can be really powerful. Like that somebody's saying like, hey, my colleague might said this and I don't really like it and I don't think that he does either. I think that could be really powerful.
Yeah, I love this idea because I first of all didn't think of it myself, but I thought it was like it's great that you're utilizing the sort of social aspect of it. It's also like sometimes when one person is like a little taken aback and they tell you, the manager might be thinking, "Oh, he's too sensitive" or something like that. But having heard it now from like a third person, in other words, like a person outside of the situation, I think can also just be like, people are noticing this thing, and it's more objective in its own way. It's like outside of that dynamic. So I think that that's where I feel like it's a very powerful tool. And you're absolutely right. Like this person has done the right thing. They first tried to address it with their manager. And when that didn't work, that must be very frustrating. My only, additional comment is that this person who wrote in said, I feel like it makes me look bad. Like as if like them, acquiescing to the compliment is like their fault. It's totally not their fault. And nobody thinks that either. I just wanted to like allay any fears that no one's thinking that. Think people are thinking, gosh, this manager is a little bit weird, a little bit awkward. They're not attributing any of that blame onto you. And so I just want to say, on some level, also just taking a step back, not feeling any responsibility for the way this person shows up in the office is the way he's behaving. And I think on some level, you kind of gotta let him like fall on his own sword and just be the person he is. And trust me, people know that it's him and not you in this situation. And I also want to compliment you. I meant to say this in the last question, but then I forgot. But that I just love the way you notice words. You really notice like the meaning of the words, and you noticed in the last question that the listener said that they were burnt out, that they were overwhelmed. I don't remember the word right now, but the idea is that, listen to the words that people say and be very intentional about that, because I think that, again, having learned a little bit about alpaca and understanding how they use the semantics, I feel like that's probably where some of that, awareness has come from. But it's really beautiful, because you're right. There is a power to specific ways in which we say things, and also that when people are coming to you as a manager, notice the things that they're saying, because it will clue you in to what they're feeling. And I think that that's just beautiful, and I just learned that from you, so thank you.
Oh, well, thanks. We've been learning it too along the way. I mean, I think in all three of the situations today, I imagine in a conversation with the boss, there are words that we use. Overwhelmed, I'm overworked, I'm concerned. I'm feeling concerned about my financial outlook, or I'm uncomfortable when you said this. Those words are so powerful, and the combinations of those words are powerful. Like if you are hearing, we said at the beginning, it's very possible to have lots of complicated emotions about work. And so listening to how they're combined, where it's like, I'm trying to be a team player and I'm trying to be great in this meeting, but you're saying stuff that makes me pretty uncomfortable. That's it. That's a combination of words that is powerful to listen to. And so, yeah, I've become much more attuned to the adjectives people use and the feelings people express about work and how they change over time.
Well, it's been incredibly educational, I should say, being with you here today. And I want to just thank you for your time and for the care with which, you helped us decipher these listener questions. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. The pleasure's all mine. It's fun to hear these different kind of workplace situations. It's always super interesting. Appreciate the time.
Yeah, and I can tell that you've been in employee engagement, because you had some really good ideas here. So I hope people take that to heart. So
Well, thanks.
yeah.
Thanks. Yeah.
So we'll be back soon with more workplace weirdness. If you've enjoyed our dive into the strange and funny side of office life, don't forget to subscribe. And if you've got some weirdness in the workplace, drop us an email at info@workplace-weirdness.com, or leave us a voice message at speakpipe.com/workplace weirdness. We might feature your question in an upcoming episode. Until next time, this is Maya Kadar Kovalsky, reminding you to embrace the quirks and make the most out of the office chaos. In the meantime, keep working, and whenever possible, stay weird. Today's show was produced by me, Maya Kadar Kovalsky, and Felicia Wang, and written by Dana Burnell. Thanks to Billy Salibi and the rest of the team at Podify who helped engineer this episode. And thanks also to Karen Borchert for joining us on today's episode. And thanks to you for listening to Workplace Weirdness. Make sure you're subscribed to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll be back next week for another breakdown of all things weird from a workplace near you.